Let me tell you something today that will shake the very core of every lie the enemy has whispered to your soul. When heaven chooses a woman, hell cannot stop her. You might have been broken, but you were never abandoned. You may have been rejected, but you were never disqualified. Why? Because purpose overrides pain. And divine calling cancels defeat. The moment God chose you, he sealed you with the strength to rise above anything that tries to bury you. Listen carefully. A woman chosen by God does not chase approval, because she already has acceptance from the one who formed her in secret. Her strength is not in how loud she roars, but in how deeply she listens to the whisper of God's Spirit. The enemy doesn't fear a loud woman. He fears a woman who is quiet enough to hear divine instruction. And I want to speak this into your spirit. You are not detached because you are emotionless. You are detached because you are focused. The woman God chooses doesn't tie her worth to how people treat her. She ties her worth to what God placed inside her. When people walk away, she doesn't fall apart. She falls into prayer, because she knows when purpose is known, abuse is impossible. Some of you have been mourning relationships that God himself severed. Let me set you free today. God will disconnect you from what distracts you to reconnect you to what defines you. Emotional detachment is not a sign of numbness. It is a sign of knowing. A woman who knows who she is does not beg to be understood. She stands in peace even when misunderstood. Why? Because she's not here to explain. She's here to fulfill. The woman chosen by God does not let her emotions become her compass. She lets wisdom lead. That's why she doesn't respond to every insult, react to every storm, or engage every conflict. She knows stillness is a strategy. Her silence is not weakness, it is warfare. The devil is confused by her calm because he expected her to collapse. But she's built on a rock, not on opinions. Now hear me. What you detach from reveals what you are assigned to. If you keep holding on to pain, betrayal, or validation, you cannot grasp destiny with both hands. That's why God allows certain people to walk away, because where you're going, they cannot go. And you need to be light to climb the mountain of purpose. You were not chosen to be comfortable. You were chosen to conquer. The anointing on your life will require you to walk alone at times. But solitude is not punishment. It is preparation. The womb of greatness is isolation. You've cried over people who didn't see your worth, but God hid you because he was shaping you. Your silence was not neglect. It was protection. Some of you are asking God, why am I being ignored? Let me tell you, when God hides you, it's because he's building you. When you're hidden, you're being developed. You're being stretched. You're being set apart. Because eagles don't flock, they soar. Let me remind you, the strength of a woman is not proven in her popularity. It is proven in her perseverance. She knows how to walk through fire and come out without smelling like smoke. Not because she's superhuman, but because she's super dependent on God. God's chosen woman is not needy, she is rooted. She doesn't attach herself to what flatters her. She aligns herself with what forms her. The compliments of men don't build her up, and their criticisms don't tear her down, because she knows when you are approved by heaven, you are unshakable on earth. I want you to remember this. Detachment is a discipline. It is not the absence of love. It is the presence of purpose. The woman chosen by God doesn't allow access to everyone. She guards her space because she understands that proximity is power. You cannot pour oil into a cracked vessel, so she steps back, not out of pride, but out of protection of her spirit, her peace, and her purpose. She doesn't carry bitterness. She carries boundaries. She doesn't carry revenge. She carries revelation. She knows that where she's headed requires inner wholeness, not external applause. A woman who knows her divine assignment cannot be shaken by temporary battles because her vision is anchored in eternity. When a woman understands that she was not just born, but sent by God into the earth with a mandate, then no weapon formed against her can prosper in the way the enemy intended. Her trials become training, and her disappointments become divine redirection. She stops viewing life through the lens of survival and starts walking with the posture of a vessel on assignment. This kind of woman doesn't fall apart at the sight of rejection or betrayal. She has learned that being chosen doesn't mean being celebrated by all. It means being prepared by God for something greater than applause. Her confidence doesn't come from what she feels in the moment, but from what she knows in her spirit. She understands that storms don't cancel purpose, they confirm it. If the enemy is attacking her, it's because she carries something valuable. And that is why she's not intimidated by warfare. She interprets it. She knows how to look at pain and say, you're here to build me, not break me. She walks through life with clarity because purpose acts like a compass. It keeps her focused when distractions rise. This woman is not confused when people misunderstand her because she knows that her assignment was never up for debate. She doesn't wait for others to give her permission to walk in her calling. She already received heaven's authorization. And because of that, her resilience is supernatural. It is not loud or boastful. It is steady and unshakable. She moves through life with the awareness that her steps are ordered, her life is authored, and her battles are already accounted for in the victory plan of God. Emotional detachment is not coldness, it is clarity. A woman chosen by God understands that every emotion does not deserve her response, and every situation does not require her involvement. She has come to realize that being led by the Spirit means being able to discern when to feel and when to focus. Her detachment is not a sign of apathy, it is a sign of spiritual maturity. She's not avoiding emotions, she's mastering them. She refuses to allow her feelings to dictate her future. Instead, she aligns her heart with God's vision and lets clarity guide her steps. This kind of woman has been through enough to know that emotions, when left unchecked, can sabotage purpose. She knows the cost of reacting in anger, of holding on to offense, of investing her energy in battles that were never hers to fight. So she has learned to be still, not because she is numb, but because she is wise. Her detachment is a deliberate decision to protect her peace and preserve her strength. She has made peace with not being understood, with walking away from what once comforted her, and with choosing the voice of God over the noise of people. She loves deeply, but she no longer clings tightly. She can release what isn't aligned without losing her identity. That's because her identity is rooted in purpose, not people. She may care, but she no longer carries burdens that God never asked her to bear. Her clarity has become her compass, showing her what to embrace and what to let go of. And in that clarity, she finds power. Power to stand firm, power to discern, and power to move forward even when her emotions try to pull her back. That's not coldness, that's spiritual intelligence. Separation from distraction is preservation for destiny. A woman chosen by God understands that she cannot carry the weight of divine purpose while entertaining everything and everyone that demands her attention. She has learned that not all access is healthy, and not every voice deserves to echo in the chambers of her heart. Distractions come in many forms: relationships, opinions, unnecessary obligations, even the noise of her own thoughts. And she has come to recognize that clarity requires separation. It is not about isolation for the sake of loneliness. It is about intentional solitude for the sake of alignment. She walks away from what looks good if it doesn't feel right in her spirit. She turns down invitations that flatter the flesh but weaken the soul. She declines conversations that add confusion and not clarity. She is not rude, she is focused. Her spiritual assignment has made her allergic to chaos. She no longer entertains things that drain her energy or dilute her vision. She knows that distraction is often the enemy's most subtle weapon, because it doesn't destroy, it delays. And she refuses to let delay rob her of destiny. This kind of woman preserves her oil. She doesn't pour into everything just because it asks. She doesn't rush to respond just because something feels urgent. She lives by discernment, not demand. Her separation is not rebellion, it is reverence. Reverence for the call of God, for the voice of God, and for the time she has been given to fulfill her purpose. She protects her focus like a soldier protects a weapon in battle, because she knows that every day is spiritual warfare, and focus is her shield. She is not distracted by noise because her ears are tuned to a higher frequency. She is preserved not by hiding, but by obeying the call to separate. Approval is not her fuel. Purpose is. A woman chosen by God has reached a level of spiritual maturity where applause no longer moves her and criticism no longer defines her. She knows that if she lives for the approval of man, she will die by their rejection. She is no longer seeking affirmation from the world because she's walking in the affirmation of heaven. The words spoken over her in the secret place matter more than the opinions shouted in the public space. She doesn't perform, she functions. She doesn't entertain, she builds. She doesn't need to be seen, she needs to be effective. She understands that chasing approval will always leave her empty because people are fickle. One moment they celebrate you, the next they crucify you, but purpose is constant. Purpose keeps her anchored when recognition is absent. Purpose sustains her when applause fades. It reminds her that her value is not in how many like her, but in how many lives she touches according to the will of God. She doesn't live to impress. She lives to impact. And impact often happens in the unseen spaces, the places where no one claps, but God takes notice. She has learned to be comfortable walking alone if it means walking in obedience. Her steps are not determined by popularity, but by principle. She understands that being chosen means being called out, and being called out often means being misunderstood. But she no longer needs the crowd to validate the call. Her fulfillment is not in being followed, it's in being faithful. She is not fueled by temporary likes, but by eternal purpose. And that's why she doesn't run out of strength easily, because her source is not external. It is deeply rooted in the God who called her, appointed her, and sustains her beyond human approval. Detachment from pain becomes alignment with promise. A woman chosen by God learns often through deep valleys and dark nights that holding on to pain can delay what heaven is trying to release. She understands that pain, when not surrendered, becomes a prison. But when placed in God's hands, it becomes a platform. She does not deny what hurt her. She simply refuses to let it have the final say. Her detachment is not denial. It is divine real. It is the decision to let go, not because it didn't matter, but because something greater is ahead. She recognizes that the promise of God requires room to manifest. Bitterness takes up space. Resentment weighs her down. Unforgiveness clouds her vision. So she detaches from the pain, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. She refuses to allow what broke her to define what builds her. She makes peace with the past so she can walk freely into the future. That doesn't mean the wound didn't cut deep. It means the healing has taken over. This woman is not emotionally numb. She is spiritually awake. She cries, but she doesn't cling. She remembers, but she doesn't remain. She knows that the pain was part of the process, but not the end of her story. And so she releases the betrayal, the abandonment, the disappointment, not for the sake of the people who hurt her, but for the sake of the promise over her life. She no longer asks why it happened. She asks, Lord, what are you preparing me for? Because pain has become her prophet. It taught her what to let go of and what to run toward. And now, every time she detaches from pain, she steps deeper into purpose. Every release becomes a repositioning. Every tear becomes a testimony. Stillness is her strength, not her silence. A woman chosen by God understands the power of restraint. She has learned that she does not need to speak to prove her authority, nor react to prove her worth. Her stillness is not the absence of voice. It is the presence of wisdom. She does not engage every argument because she knows who she is. Her identity is not up for discussion, and her purpose is not on trial. When others provoke her, she remains unmoved, not because she cannot respond, but because she has counted the cost of reaction and chosen peace instead. Her strength is found in her ability to pause, to wait, and to listen for God's voice before making a move. She is not led by impulse, but by instruction. She understands that movement without direction leads to chaos, and speaking without clarity leads to confusion. So she stands still, not in fear, but in faith. She knows that battles are often won not by fighting, but by standing. The world calls it passive, but heaven calls it powerful. This kind of woman has mastered the art of silence, not the kind that hides truths, but the kind that protects it. She keeps certain things in her spirit because she understands the timing of God. She doesn't need to be loud to be heard in the spirit realm. Her stillness makes room for divine intervention. Her calm disrupts the enemy's plan. Her peace is a weapon. She doesn't waste energy proving herself to people who are not assigned to her destiny. She lets God speak on her behalf. Her strength is not in doing more. It's in knowing when to do nothing and let the Lord fight her battles. Her stillness is a sign that she trusts the one who sent her. Emotional maturity is spiritual warfare. A woman chosen by God understands that her greatest battles are not always fought in the external world, but within the hidden chambers of her own soul. She has come to realize that the war is often between reaction and restraint, between impulse and wisdom, between being offended and staying grounded in purpose. Her emotional discipline is not weakness. It is a divine strategy. The enemy thrives on chaos, on instability, on drama. But this woman refuses to hand him that power. Her calmness is not a lack of feeling. It is a conscious refusal to let feelings rule her decisions. She knows that the enemy doesn't always come with a sword. Sometimes he comes with a whisper, trying to provoke, trying to agitate, trying to pull her out of alignment through offense, through insecurity, through emotional fatigue. But she has trained her spirit to recognize the schemes. She doesn't react the way she used to. She doesn't let anger speak for her. She doesn't allow fear to guide her. She chooses peace, not because it's easy, but because it's spiritual warfare in disguise. This woman has learned to pause before responding, to pray before confronting, to walk away when staying means losing her peace. She has learned to master her emotions, not suppress them, but submit them to the Holy Spirit. That's what makes her dangerous to the enemy, because he can't predict her. She doesn't take the bait. She doesn't fall for distractions disguised as conversations. She stays rooted in purpose, unmoved by pettiness. Her silence is sharp. Her composure is authority. She wears self-control like armor. And when the enemy sees her choosing peace, choosing wisdom, choosing love over vengeance, he loses ground. Because emotional maturity is not just growth, it is warfare. And she knows how to win without making noise. She knows who she is without needing to explain. A woman chosen by God has moved beyond the desire to be understood by everyone. She no longer feels the need to justify her boundaries, her silence, or her decisions to people who are not connected to her divine assignment. Her identity is rooted in the one who created her, not in the opinions of those who don't recognize her worth. She doesn't seek validation because she has revelation. She understands that if God said it, she doesn't need to debate it. This woman walks with quiet confidence, not arrogance, but assurance. Her assurance comes from deep encounters with God, not shallow conversations with people. She's not interested in proving anything because she knows who she is and who sent her. Her value is not based on applause or acceptance, but on alignment with God's will. And that's why she can walk into a room and be at peace, even when misunderstood, misjudged, or misrepresented. She doesn't break under the pressure to explain herself. She simply continues to walk in purpose. Her sense of identity has been forged in secret, through prayer, through tests, through obedience. That's why the silence of others doesn't intimidate her. That's why their absence doesn't shake her. She understands that sometimes God will hide your worth from people who are not assigned to your future. And instead of chasing clarity from others, she rests in the clarity God has already given her. When people question her path, she doesn't argue, she trusts. When they challenge her decisions, she doesn't panic, she prays. Her confidence is not defensive because her spirit is secure. She knows who she is, and why she's here. And that knowledge sets her free from the exhausting need to be explained, accepted, or applauded. She lets go of what drains to hold what builds. A woman chosen by God has learned the sacred art of release. She no longer clings to what consumes her energy, but contributes nothing to her destiny. She discerns the difference between something that challenges her to grow and something that constantly depletes her strength. She knows that carrying what God never gave her is a silent form of disobedience, and so, with courage and clarity, she lets go, not because she's heartless, but because she's called. She doesn't hold on to friendships that drain her peace. She doesn't stay in environments that suffocate her spirit. She doesn't entertain conversations that weaken her faith. She knows that whatever costs her her clarity is too expensive. She has made a covenant with growth. And growth always requires sacrifice. She no longer entertains out of obligation or stays connected out of guilt. She lets go, not in bitterness, but in obedience. Because obedience often looks like release. She walks away from what distracts her, not because she's proud, but because she understands the weight of her assignment. There's a seriousness on her life that doesn't allow room for unnecessary attachments. What builds her is what feeds her soul. God's word, divine relationships, purpose-filled environments, and intentional living. She chooses what edifies over what entertains. She prioritizes what strengthens her spirit over what pleases her flesh. This woman does not apologize for choosing peace. She does not feel guilty for choosing growth over comfort. She has been through enough to recognize that not everything that's familiar is healthy. And so when it comes to her time, her space, her energy, she has become selective, not out of pride, but out of preservation. Because her calling requires her to be full, not constantly running on empty. She is not undefeated because she never fell, but because she always rose. A woman chosen by God does not define her strength by how few times she has stumbled, but by how many times she stood back up. Her journey is not marked by perfection, but by perseverance. She has faced deep disappointments, heavy losses, and silent battles, but each time she got back up with more wisdom, more courage, and more fire. Her defeats did not define her, they refined her. What tried to break her only awakened what God placed inside of her. She doesn't hide her scars, she honors them. Because every scar tells a story, and every story points to the faithfulness of God. She understands that falling is human, but rising is divine. There were seasons where she almost gave up, when the pain was louder than the promise, and the delay looked like denial. But she chose to trust God in the dark. She chose to rise when quitting felt easier, not untouched by pain, but unclaimed by defeat. This kind of woman doesn't measure her strength by how others see her. She measures it by how many times she refused to stay down. Even when her heart was shattered, her spirit kept reaching. Even when the doors were closed, her faith kept knocking. She cries, she wrestles, she questions, but she keeps going. She knows that being chosen doesn't mean she won't fall. It means she will always rise again, covered by grace, fueled by purpose. Each fall has taught her how to fight smarter, pray deeper, and trust God more fiercely. Her resilience is her testimony. Her rise is her rhythm. She may bend, but she never breaks. Because what is within her was placed there by God himself, and nothing can erase what he has ordained. So hear me clearly. A woman chosen by God is not defined by her circumstances. She is defined by her calling. She does not draw her strength from approval, applause, or appearance. Her power comes from alignment with her Creator. She walks through fire and comes out refined, not burned. She is not afraid of the valley because she knows who walks with her. She may lose people, comfort, or temporary positions, but she never loses her identity. And that identity makes her unstoppable. She is not defeated by delays. She is not destroyed by detours. She does not shrink when the storm comes. She stands anchored in truth, rooted in purpose, clothed in wisdom. She is quiet but dangerous, hidden but chosen, soft in spirit but immovable in faith. She has learned to let go, to detach, to protect what is sacred, and to rise again with divine authority. The world may overlook her, misunderstand her, underestimate her, but heaven knows her by name. And when God chooses a woman, no rejection, no betrayal, no loss, and no attack from the enemy can ever cancel her assignment. She may be pressed, but she is not crushed. She may be wounded, but she is not finished. Because when God puts his hand on a woman, she will rise. She will lead, she will build, she will conquer. And above all, she will never be defeated.